Well, good morning. I'm Jim Frankel, and I'm very, very pleased to be here with you today. I'd like to first of all thank everyone at MTEC, Katie and Glennis, for inviting me, Soundhouse Alliance, Roland and Avid, Alan, Billy Hyde, and all the sponsors for allowing me to spend some time with you this morning talking about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, which is rethinking music education. Just to give you a quick, all of my materials are located at a landing page that I made just for the event. All the links that I'll be sharing with you today are already posted there. For those of you that can't see it from the back, it's soundtree.com/MTEC2011. Before I get into it this morning, I just want to give you a little bit about my background. You probably haven't heard of me before. You're too kind. And these things are important to frame the discussion that we're having this morning. First of all, I am a musician first, right? Started with piano, went to trumpet. My middle school band director said, "Look at those lips. You're a tuba player." What's tuba? And then I had a moment in high school where my band director did something which changed my life and said, "The first kid in my career that I recommend you become a professional musician, a professional tuba player." To this day, I'm not so sure whether I love him or hate him but I want to frame everything I'm going to talk about this morning in that I'm a musician first, and it is my love. I'm also an electronic music enthusiast. In 1983, I bought a Roland Juno 106. So here's to Roland. And I learned how to do sequencing. And I bought an old NEC computer, NEC. It was like the first 286K. And I put a Sequencer Plus Mark I in my computer. And I input all of the pieces I'd ever not been able to play on piano into my sequencer and learned how they should sound. Did anybody ever have that experience? The first time I hit play on the Sequencer Plus Mark I was hooked instantly, and I knew that I would probably have electronic music with me for the rest of my life. So being a tuba player and an electronic musician is perfect, because you certainly aren't going to make any money playing the tuba. I became a composer. I was a rock band. I think like every other American kid, I wanted to be a rock star. I followed Kiss. 1970s. I'm a kid of the 70s, so I wanted to be the keyboard player for Kiss that they were missing. And my lovely wife asked me to start composing for her when she came over from England. She's a modern dancer, and so I started getting into the real kind of electronic music composition thing. And after that, I became a K-12 music educator because, of course, you can't make a living playing the tuba. I tried for a year. And I lived on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I played every single Italian feast and oompa gig in the world. I went to teachers college soon after teaching because I knew that I wanted something more. I knew that I wanted to learn more about music technology and how it could be used effectively. It was always my hobby. And when I started using it to teach, I went to Columbia University to get my master's and doctorate. And so I still teach there today. Every Monday night, I'm there teaching future music educators. My professional organizations are, I'm the president of ATME, which is the Association of Technology and Music Instruction, which is the collegiate level professional organization in the States. And I'm the recent vice president of TIME, which is the K-12 organization. I became the SoundTree managing director about 3 years ago. We're the educational division of Korg USA. So I left the classroom. I've been talking to a couple people. It was, for better or for worse. And written a couple of books. But I think the thing that's most important is my personal background. I'm the grandson, great-grandson, and great-great-grandson of music teachers, right? My mother was a Broadway actress. And I'm the brother of 2 Broadway actors. So I'm the black sheep of the family. My sister's been on Broadway for 20 years, and my brother is one of those blue men in Blue Men Group, paints himself blue. Yeah, and he makes twice what I do by working 4 nights a week and catching marshmallows in his mouth. But I'm also a husband and a father, and when you have children, this kind of thing changes everything in your perspective of music education. And even though I'm recording today's presentation, it is difficult when your kids come home from school and they say they hate music. And that's what I hear from my children. What's your favorite subject? And I keep waiting for music, and I keep waiting for music. And it's usually recess, library, gym, lunch, English, social studies, science, math, music. And for me, it absolutely kills me. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background so you know me a little bit better, because I'm about to hit you with some philosophical ideas that hopefully will give you stuff to think about this morning and in the future. Let's see. So in the United States, music programs are currently under attack. This is not rhetoric, it's not propaganda, it's factual. Austin, Texas, one of the music capitals of our country, they just laid off every single elementary music teacher. 440 teachers, one fell swoop, gone. And in my opinion, by the way, that is replicated around the country. Los Angeles, the entire city, every elementary music teacher fired. And it's because of some nefarious banking practices in 2008. That's the bottom line. And all the education budgets have been cut and cut and cut. And so I'm going to get a little bit mercenary here, because I talk to music educators all the time about numbers. Now that I'm in the business world, this makes a lot of sense to me. How many of you have heard this term, the other 80%? In the United States, this is big right now in music education, and it means the 80% of students who are not being currently served by music programs. 80% of kids in the United States do not have music after elementary school, right? So it's only 20%. So from a purely numerical standpoint, music educators have put themselves in an absolutely horrible position by only wanting the best kids, only wanting that 20%, only wanting the kids who want to be there. And what happens is all the other 80% that are not involved in the traditional music programs are doing other things. They're making music on their own. They're home playing video games. They have their earbuds in. They think music's awesome, but they're not part of the music program. And from my standpoint, if that continues, music programs will continue to disappear in the United States. Because when it comes time to a board of education deciding who to cut, believe it or not, they think about what will have the worst impact. And in my town, if they cut the sports program, they'd burn the Board of Education building down. But if they cut the music program, only a couple of parents would get annoyed. And that is I know it's a really cynical way to look at it, but I think music teachers have to have 100% of the parents and 100% of the kids engaged and loving music, so that when it comes up on the chopping block and they put the music program up there, they burn the building down for even suggesting it. That's my opinion. And I think that we are not, at least in the States, and what I've seen here so far at this conference, maybe it's not as big a problem here. But in the States, we really have an issue. And that, by the way, that other 80% is research-based. That is surveys and surveys and surveys. To me, there's another problem, and that's disconnect. And to me, disconnect means that what we're teaching in our schools has nothing to do with what they're doing the second they get out of school and put their iPods in their ears. And as I said earlier, I don't think there's ever been a time in music education where we've had such a willing audience. The kids they love music. When I was a kid, I sat with my Pink Floyd records and my headphones, and it was a very isolated, I sat in my bedroom and listened to the wall over and over and over and watched cover art. Music today, in my opinion, is a very social activity. The kids love sharing music with each other, right? They love talking about it. It has a lot to do with their style, with their sense of who they are. I believe that music education is kind of missing that whole popular music thing. I'm going to show you a video now, which you may have seen before. How many have seen Greg Breinberg? Anybody seen this video? school last year. It's PS22 in Staten Island, New York. Sorry to talk over them. But do you know this music teacher gets hate mail? He gets absolute hate mail from music educators saying, what the hell do you think you're doing, singing popular music? And you're making these kids do this on purpose. You're making them affected. Anybody see the Academy Awards this year? In the States, they were the closing act. They sang Over the Rainbow at the Academy Awards, this chorus. I was there. He's an incredible music educator. These kids are filled with music, and they're expressing it. And at least in the States, we see that as a threat. They have to sit there with their hands at their side, not moving. That's music. But when these kids get really into it and move, they accuse Greg of being exploitive. To me, it's really sad. I'm going to get rid of that little buzz for you. Or maybe I can. Students want to create content in the same medium in which they consume it. They're not interested in writing papers anymore. They want to put stuff up on YouTube. They want to make podcasts. They want to make really good records. They want to create stuff just like their idols. And when you and I were kids, how many ever had the experience, or did you have the same experience as I, the first time you recorded on a CD and put it in a CD player and press play? I was blown away that I was on a CD. Absolutely couldn't speak. And to the kids today, this is instant. They can do it in 2 seconds. And when I was growing up, that was nearly impossible. You'd have to go into a recording studio and spend a lot of money. But today it is possible. Let me plug it back in. I'm sorry if it buzzes. But it's worth the... Here's a kid I found on YouTube. I'll be doing a session later. All right. I don't know what I did. Does anybody know what I did?
It's time to get things going. It's time to dress up right.
Thank you.
It's time to raise the curtain for our voices tonight. We're really glad to be here. You're such a super crowd. We're sorry about our tenor. He always sings too loud. And now let's get things started. Why don't we get things started? It's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, voice sensational. Now it's time to start the show tonight.
How many have seen that video before? You have, excellent. His kid's name is Danny Fong, and he lives in Saskatchewan, Canada, and he's 17. And when I wrote my YouTube book, I called him up, said, I want to put you in the book. Why on earth did you do that? I just want to know what you did that for. And he said, well, he went to his chorus director and said, I would like to start a barbershop quartet. And the chorus director said, go for it. Just find 3 other boys and we'll do it with you. And then he went around, asked his friends, like, dude, I'm not doing barbershop. That's like old farm music. I'm not doing it. And so he did it himself. He went into his bedroom, and I've watched that video 1,000 times. You can see the clock behind him. He did each take one after the other because the clock is 5 minutes later, right? He used GarageBand. He used a Samson USB mic for $99. I think the shock mount costs more than the mic. And he used Final Cut Express to make the 4-screen thing. And he recorded each track with a click in his ear. And he put it up on YouTube. And now, hundreds of thousands of views later, Danny's famous. Right? But to me, in the United States, we as music educators are not allowing this to happen. We're not getting kids the opportunity to do this kind of stuff. They're doing it at home in spite of us. That's a terrible, I think, a terrible place to be. So when we talk about rethinking music education, there are a lot of questions you have to keep in mind. And I had a discussion with a good friend of mine who said if you were to pretend that music education, formal music education, didn't exist, and you were an alien, and came here today and said, I think we should start teaching music in the schools, what would it look like? What would you do? Based upon the student population that's in your class. By the way, I don't have answers to these. And what role will technology play in that reimagining? That's what the heart of today's talk is all about. So what are the goals of music education? And have they changed in the last 100 years? To me, the goals of education that I see are to whittle out from the masses a couple of really good musicians, right? Again, maybe this is not cynical. I think there's a lot of value in learning music. To me, it changed my life. But the goals of music education in the States, at least the way I see it, is to give every kid a baseline of music. But then when they get into high school, weed them out until you get the kids who really want to be there, and then the absolute best kids of all, you send them off to a conservatory and you say goodbye, right? Is that really what, is that really, to me, the point of music education should be to create lifelong music lovers, period. And that if there are those children who are so compelled they can't live without playing their instrument, then God bless them, right? And if there are those students who like to make beats and remix, right, then let them do that, but have them an opportunity to do it in your classroom rather than at home by themselves. And if there are those kids that all they want to do is listen to music, that's it. They just want to listen and have music all around them, then how are you going to help them out? But I think the goals are right now a pyramid in music education, with the point on top being the absolute superstar, and it should be exactly the opposite way. What are your goals as a music educator? Are you creating a performer? Is that your point? Is that why you wake up every morning, to make your kids performers? I'm not to say that's wrong or not. It's just what's your reason for teaching? Is it to create theorists? Is it to create future music educators? I remember that very stunning moment in my sophomore year of college where I went like this, and maybe, again, not the nicest thought, but I went, oh, I get it. You told me I could be a professional tuba player. I got in here, and I'm going to be a teacher, so that then I can get other people really excited in the tuba, so that they could go to college, not get a job, playing, and they could teach. I had this kind of really bad moment in sophomore year of college where I went, oh, I get it. But I don't think that's the point of music education at all. And have your goals changed since you started teaching? Because when I started teaching, I totally mimicked my teacher. It's fight or flight. I was like, oh, this isn't working. My first year was in the worst part of New Jersey, the most challenging inner city in New Jersey. Very, very, very high crime rates. I was threatened to be killed by students. All kinds of wonderful things. And I immediately became my high school band director, who was a taskmaster disciplinarian, and it worked for a while. Anyway, sorry, it's a little remote. How have your students changed since you started teaching? You know you've been in it for a while when you say the following. These kids are so much worse today than they were when I started teaching. When I started, kids were respectful, and now they don't care, or they treat me like whatever. To me, the students that are in your classrooms are neurologically, biologically, physiologically different than you. Period. They're different beasts. Their brains are hardwired in a completely different way than you. And rather than trying to force them to learn it your way, you have to kind of adapt to the way they're learning, and which is a very different way than we did. I remember my first music theory teacher sitting behind a piano and playing intervals. And we did that for an hour every Saturday at this little conservatory. I remember wanting to evaporate. I didn't want to be there anymore with him just plunking out intervals. All right, so this one is a little controversial in the US. From what I've heard so far at this conference, I don't think it will be. But should we still hold fast to the BCO model? And BCO meaning band, chorus, orchestra, as the primary face of music education. That it's all about band, chorus, orchestra. Where I teach in New York, when I say things like that, it's like, yeah, maybe there is another part of music education, but when I go to Texas, and I even suggest that there's another option out there than the BCO model, I can see the crossbow, ready. What are you going to say next, Frankel? But is that model sustainable, getting back to what I talked about before with the other 80%? How many of you heard of Bennett Reamer before? Educational philosopher of music, right? This next quote shocked me when I read it. Here's Bennett Reamer. If we retain our present monolithic concentration on bands, orchestras, and choruses as the major ways to offer special music opportunities, and if we continue to concentrate on performance-focused methodologies as the major way to provide general music education, then we may find ourselves left in history's dust. And if you know Bennett Reamer and you've read his stuff, I was just like, thank you, Bennett, for saying that. Now, I'm not saying that we should eliminate the band, chorus, orchestra model. I'm saying we need to expand it and add another letter to BCO and make it BCOC, creativity. When I talk about creativity, I'm going to play you a song right now that, how many of you have heard of Harry Chapin before? All right. So if you've heard this song, it's worth another listen. And if you haven't, listen very carefully. It's called Flowers Are Red.
The little boy went first day of school, he got his crayons and he started to draw. He put colors all over the paper, all colors was what he saw. And the teacher said, "What you doing, young man?" "I'm painting flowers," he said. She said, "It's not the time for art, young man. And anyway, flowers are green and red. There's a time for everything, young man, a way it should be done. You got to show concern for everyone else, or you're not the only one." And she said, "Flowers for every young man, green leaves for green. I was going to see flowers in the way they always have." But the little boy said, "There are so many colors in the rainbow, so many colors in the morning sun, so many colors in the flower, and I see everyone."
Well, I won't play you the whole song because I don't have that much time with you this morning. But I urge you to get Flowers Are Red, because what happens next in the song, the kid tries again. The teacher yet again says, "You're wrong." He uses purple and he makes the stem, bright orange. And the teacher says, you're wrong. Flowers are red, green leaves are green. Hammers it out of him. And then a new teacher comes the next year and says, "You can do whatever you want." And the child says, "I'm sorry, but flowers are red, green leaves are green." What about non-traditional musicians? How do you address those in your classroom, in your school? Do you? In the U.S., the non-traditional students are the ones who actually go out and make money. It's true. And when you look at somebody like a Paul McCartney, who is rejected by his own chorus for not being allowed, right? And if you look at every superstar in the music world, many, many, many of them were not involved in their music programs in school because they didn't offer them what they wanted. Both my brother and sister, who have worked for 20 years in the business, were not involved in their music programs at school because they thought they were corny or cheesy, whatever you want to call it. To me, the non-traditional musician in my classes were also the discipline problems in everyone else's. But once I validated them as talented musicians, guitarists, with long hair that said lots of bad words, once I said, "Dude, you're awesome." Instant hook. The kid became my best friend, couldn't do anything more for me. And in the teacher's room, I would be the crazy man saying, "The kid is awesome." And they're like, "He's awful, we're suspending." To me, those little gems that are in your classrooms that you may not know, it's really sad if they never make it through your music program. And totally in a funny way, I always found that putting those kids in my program, it was the pianists. The pianists in the school never got a chance to shine, ever. They maybe played with the chorus. But the pianists in the school where I taught, what I would do, once I found out this kid plays piano, I put them on the spring concert between acts. And the parents would give this kid a standing O and think I had everything to do with it. It's brilliant. I love maximum impact with low effort. You know, you put the kid up there like, and what about popular music? There was recently, 2 years ago, in the Music Educators Journal, our state or our national journal of music ed, a professor in Florida wrote that he believes that popular music should be as important in the canon that we teach as Scott Joplin, Bach, and that Nirvana belongs there. And the hate mail he received the next month was published. Dear letter to the editor, how dare you suggest that we teach Nirvana alongside of Bach? Are you insane? You know, and I hope you get fired from your position as a university, you know, teaching. You're sending future music educators out there with that notion. How dare you? We'll see what happens, because I think it's, again, goes back to this other 80%. That's such a ridiculous thing, because the two lessons I remember from my entire music education, 7th grade, Mr. Gallo told us we can make a music, MTV had just come on. It just came out, like 1981 in the States. I was in 7th grade, and he said, make your own music video. I'm going to give each of you a roll of white paper towels and 2 dowels, and you're going to stand up there and roll, right? And I did like AC/DC's Back in Black video, music video. I remember that vividly, and I remember my 8th grade music teacher, Mr. Frame, teaching me song form by using David Bowie's Changes. Ch-ch-ch-ch-ch, and we all sat there in class going, A, or verse, chorus. And I still remember it vividly because he was using cool music that I loved. And to this day, 30 years later, I remember that lesson. I could tell you exactly what he said. So when I look to find answers to all of the questions that I've just posed to you, I've had an incredible relationship with this gentleman for the last 3 years, Morton Subotnick. How many of you have heard of Morton before? Morton is the grandfather of electronic music. He really is. The first piece of electronic music ever recorded was Morton Subotnick's Silver Apples of the Moon. Or whatever, it was made for CD, or made for a record, excuse me. Brilliant gentleman. And I've been working on a project with him for the last 3 years. Electronic music pioneer. He's a composer, obviously. He's a software creator, and you probably know him from these titles: Making Music, Making More Music, Hearing Music, Playing Music, and his latest, which is World of Music. Have you heard of those before? If you have not, go to creatingmusic.com and check out what he does. He's a thinker. He's perhaps the smartest man I know. I love going to his apartment in Greenwich Village and spending 3 hours with just talking shop. And we are working together on this book. So he believes that electronic music is the ultimate way to let children, let everybody make music. So here he is last month. Sorry about the buzz. He's playing a Buchla synthesizer. No keys on it. You can't see the video at all. But he's nearing 80 years old, and he uses Ableton Live like no one I've ever seen. All controller based. Sounds like a didgeridoo. Really great video. It looks better up here, though, I promise. So when he created the first synthesizer, when he asked, or when he commissioned the first synthesizer to be built by Don Buchla, he wanted it to be called an electronic music easel with no keys, and let anybody turn knobs, plug in patch cables, and play with sound and see what happens. He believes in this thing called the 3-person model of music. And just to give you the real skinny on it, if you think about music in the 17th century, 18th century, prehistoric times, music was very functional. It was just something you did. There was no thinking about it. You sang, you played drums, you did whatever. In the parlor kind of 18th century Europe, you had to know an instrument to entertain yourself. And then along came formal education, right? And he believes that we've forgotten about this 3-person model, which is the listener. Everybody is a listener. everybody is a performer, and everybody is a composer. And that in hundreds of years ago, these three things were just not seen as even delineated at all. You just did it. You made up music, you played it, you listened to each other do it. How was that? And then formal music education came along and really compartmentalized these three things and favored which one? The performer, right? For a variety of reasons. Yes, please. Maybe I should move here. And I'm not saying that with any kind of, cheekiness. Well, in the United States, absolutely not that way, not even close. It's performing, listening in a distant second, and composition in a distant 15th. That's and if anyone tells you different, they haven't been teaching in the States for a long time, because that's how it is. You find those jewels. You find the gem teachers who are doing all three. But they're the rock stars of music ed, in my opinion. Most people just go to the performance thing. And what Subotnick did with his three-person model is created software for children that address those three things. So the listening is hearing music. I mean, it's pretty right in your face. Hearing music, playing music, and making music. Hear, play, make. And what I love about Subotnick is, and David said this on Monday, music literacy is extremely important, but it can be a barrier to the creative process in the beginning. You know, just because you don't know what a quarter note is, or do you call them minims here? Sorry. Talking the same language. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to express yourself musically. By the way, when I say that in certain areas of the country, arrows come out. You know, how dare you suggest that non-notation-based composition is even a possibility if they don't know notation. So what I love about Subotnick is he uses this metaphor of finger painting. When you have children, or if you have children, and they put their hands in finger paint, and they start painting, right? They love the visceral feeling of the paint. They love to see the causal relationship when they mix things together. And if you leave the child to it, almost every single time at the end, the canvas is brown. The whole thing. Right? Would you ever, while your 2-year-old was doing that, walk up to them and grab their hands and say, "What are you doing? You don't know the color wheel. You don't know perspective. You have no right to create right now. I'm sorry. You need to learn the art, perspective, because I don't even know what that is." Right? It's comical. In music, however, at least in the States, that's exactly how I feel it's done. If you don't have all the music literacy skills first, you have no business composing. And therefore, the composition doesn't happen because we spend our entire general music curriculum teaching them the skills that they're never going to use. I love this metaphor, and I think it's a great way to look at things. So his software is finger painting. This is how you compose. You draw. So I worked as an educational consultant on his newest title, which is called World of Music. And my 3-year-old daughter at the time was testing it out. She sat in his lap a couple of times. And to me, it's like sitting with Beethoven, my kid. And she was drawing. And then he said, "All right, I'd like you to go around the country and do focus groups and use this software. We want to see, do kids prefer this over other titles?" So the first time I did it, I went up to the board, an interactive whiteboard with the software, and I said to the children, "Watch this." And I drew this shape. And I said to the kids, "Let's sing it." And the kids went, "Woo, woo." And me, I'm thinking, I am a pedagogical genius. All right, kids, now you go and create. That's exactly how I did it. And I showed that video to Mort a week later, and he almost shot me and said that I destroyed the kids. What are you talking about, buddy? I have a doctorate in music education, I've not done anything of the sort. And he said, no, don't you see, you just showed them. You've told them this is what you do, and now they're mimicking you so that they will please you. Because what we've done, at least, I'm guilty as sin as a parent, is that when a kid makes that finger painting and you say, what is that? You know, what is, ooh, that's so awesome. We'll put it up on a refrigerator and sign it. The child says, oh, so that's what art is. I create stuff that you like, and you put it up on the, oh, I get it. Cool. Now, by the way, Morton and I butt heads a little bit on this one because as a parent, I'm never, you know, I think whatever my kid does is fantastic. But what Mort feels is that the teacher should have shouldn't open their mouths. Just let the kids do it. And your job is to purely bring it out of them. Get out from the kids and ask them questions. What are you doing? You know, rather than saying, okay, we all need to create an 8-measure melody. You can only use chord, that's the way I teach, by the way. Very structured. that was an interesting But so the book we're writing is me arguing with him the whole time. It's an argument between me as traditional music education and Mort basically saying, you're all wrong, all of you, you're doing it wrong. Maybe not here in Australia, but certainly in the US. So he believes that all children are born musical, every single one of them, and that many teachers in the United States destroy that pretty quickly once they get to formalized education. They get into kindergarten and they just say, man, I don't want to do this anymore. He believes that all children are born creative. His musical thing is really interesting because the research that he and I are working on suggests that all children are born with perfect pitch. Every one of them. Because if you put a baby in a room with 10 mothers, and all the mothers speak the exact same motherese to the child, the baby every single time will know, that's my mom, right there. Even if all the mothers go, woo, woo, coochie coo, all 10 mothers, baby knows the mother every time. It's a survival thing. And then what happens is as soon as language comes along, I don't need that anymore. I know what my mom's saying, right? I love working with this guy. He's pretty smart. He believes that formal education, music education, adopts the Olympian model. And I love it, the Olympian model. And what that is, only those with talent should continue. Right? This has many parallels in other subject areas, to be sure. And creativity in children is mistaken, is often mistaken as subversive behavior and stifled. Right? When the kid who's a little bit crazy, right, is always the genius, but the teacher wants to clip their wings and say, no, you will sit in a row, you will listen to what I'm saying, and you will not interrupt me. I believe that the best classrooms on earth are the most chaotic. That when you've got real creativity going in your classroom and kids are really engaged and administrators come by your door and go, what on earth is going on in there? You're doing it right. I truly believe that. You have to get into a position where your administrators believe that too. Personally, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, but I personally would move schools. Or you know, I know it's not a solution, but that would make me so angry. A good classroom is supposed to be quiet. And he believes the language of music is often confusing, and that in this Olympian kind of search for the best musicians, oftentimes the music we use with children to describe music is confusing to the kid. And so what he uses the high-low thing. When you say to a child, is this pitch high or low, right? And the kid says, I don't know. Oh, you're tone deaf, right? But it could be that the kid thinks high means loud and low means soft. And in many cultures, that's exactly what it means. In many cultures, high pitches are called young, and low pitches are called old, right? So he believes there's a problem with music vocabulary as well. You have to, and I think what he's getting to is creating the need to know within the child so then you can teach them the language. But if you don't get that strong need to know first, they don't care about the language that you're teaching them. And last but not least, he believes there are nowhere near enough opportunities for critical listening and creativity in the classroom. And then what some teachers do is make a one period of the day, or one period of their one unit of their curriculum, a little bit of composition, and the kids get it ticked off. Yep, you did 8 bars, you got creativity done. You know. To me, creativity takes a lot of time, and it's very messy. All right, so moving on a little bit, to connect Subotnick with the questions that I asked in the beginning about reimagining music education, I believe that the way technology fits into his model is very similar to what this gentleman, Gerd Leonard, talks about, media futurist.
Music today is a utility. It's a public utility. It's like electricity or like water. Everybody listens to music. Everybody wants music. So we can't really act like music is a product in the same way because it has become completely liquid. Anywhere on the web, you can get music. The direct connection between the creator, the composer, the musician, the band, and the consumer, or the user as we call them now, that's the future. Because that's what the web.
Did you hear what he said? The connection between the listener, the creator, and the performer is the future of music. And if you think about it, today with technology, it's totally possible to be the listener, the creator, and the performer. Yes, thanks. What I see as the technology integration of what Subotnick's talking about is, oh, that's right. See, there's a little infrared. There we go. I see that technology impact is capturing for the performer, connecting for the listener, and creating for the composer. Does that make sense? And by capturing, I'm talking specifically about things like assessment and smart music. Smart music must be here in Australia, yes? It's very, very big in the States, where the students are being assessed by the computer. They're playing into it and it grades their accuracy. It's the #1 music software title in the States as an assessment title, but it's capturing their performance. Creativity, no. Assessment, yes. Okay. There's also, and this is from my own personal experience, I ran a school of rock, best 3 months of my life as a music educator, because I got to do cool music with the kids and they loved it. Here's a performance which I think you'll find funny. They're 6th graders, so 11-year-olds, singing "Girl, You Really Got Me." And if I don't have a picture of the kid singing it, but all the vocal people in here, the little boy, I'll imitate how he was singing. He was very, these are the kids. We raised money for the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, and here's the recording. Oh, of course. 6th graders. As a kid. But what I did with that is I recorded them with an M-Audio micro track out of the board, and that's on iTunes, on the music store. It's sold. It was the first ever public school recording on iTunes. I was that kind of nerdy person. I wanted to be first. The kids, when I announced at the concert that this will be sold on iTunes, they almost went apoplectic. The parents were like, what? And it's really, by the way, very, very simple. There's a website called TuneCore in the States, T-U-N-E-C-O-R-E. $25 a year, you upload anything you want, goes on the music store. You pay the royalties, you do it the right way. In the States, we use Harry Fox. I don't know what you use down here in Australia to pay off the royalties, but great. So, you know, I think every music teacher should have one of these on their belt. It might be a little nerdy, but you need some kind of recording device to capture what the students are doing. It is a great assessment tool, and I believe it's the most passive of all technology integration. That, you know, you're just recording what they're doing and playing it back for them. And it's wonderful when you record your band and the drummers are playing really loud, and then you play it back for them, and they're dying because they can hear nothing but the drums. You say, thank you. Exactly. So it's play softly. By connecting, I'm speaking specifically about, or one of them is blogs. And so I'm just going to read you some, here, you don't always have to do popular music from today. This is Guillaume Dufay. Certainly not around now, right? L'Homme Armé, that one. So I posted on a blog that's located at fams.musiced.net. This piece is from a mass poster critique. And so I'm going to share with you one of the students. By the way, at least my experience was kids were so much more intelligent online than when they wrote it down on paper. When they wrote it down on paper, they would write something like, "This sucks." And when they put it up on a blog, this is what I got. L'Homme Armé is a song written by Guillaume Dufay. It is a French song that was popular during the 15th century, during the Renaissance. The song was used in the beginning of the Mass. I told them, first paragraph, historical background. Second paragraph, exactly what you heard, using as much musical vocabulary as possible. I heard men and women singing in French about this armed man. They're all singing the same thing. There are no harmonies. L'Homme Armé is in ABA form. There are no instruments in this song. Good. This is the best part, your opinion. I really didn't like this song. First of all, I couldn't understand what they were singing because I don't speak French. I like harmonies and instruments in songs, but L'Homme Armé doesn't have any. And finally, the men and women singing were screaming these words, which made the mood of the song mad and angry, which I didn't like. So I really dislike this song, and I'm glad it's not popular today. A+. Because my job as a music teacher is not to force them to like that. It's to tell them or force them to understand why they don't. Here's another one I think you'll really like. Queen of the Night, right? I love this one. Angie. I can't say it. It was written by Mozart, a piece from the Magic Flute. All right, blah, blah, blah. In this piece, I obviously heard a talented soprano belt out all those high notes miraculously. There was an orchestra playing to accompany her with sound effects in the back like the clashing of thunder. But here's the best part. To me, to a person who's never been to an opera before, this was absolutely amazing. Of course, I really don't know what the Queen is ranting about since everything is in German, until I saw the translation of the lyrics and the comments of the English version of this opera, which are not even half as good. She saw this on YouTube. She went and did it on her own. She's like, Queen of the Night, YouTube, all right. But the language doesn't really affect the actual music, does it? 13-year-old. Snazzy costume. Oh yeah, she's only 13. Her crown was bothersome though. Attempting that part hurts, I've come to realize. So I'll just let Luciana Serra sing it. Her voice is indeed wonderful though. I wouldn't exactly go to an opera just to see her, but if it was free, that's another story. And what I love about it is that the kids, I was playing them the canon of dead white guy composers, and they were listening to it and critiquing it in their own language, and those are all fantastic answers. I absolutely love it. And again, I'm not trying to get them to like it. Podcasts, here we go. Oh my goodness, I've probably got 5 minutes. This was the most popular education podcast on iTunes for a long time. My kids created this.
Welcome to This Week in Music for the week of October 29, 2007. Today we will be talking about famous musicians born during this week as well as important events in music history. This week in 1983, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon had been on the U.S. charts for 491 weeks, longer than any other album. It still sells amazingly well today. John Lennon's Imagine album was #1 in the U.S.
You get the idea. What they did was they made podcasts of what was going on this week in music history, right? And you notice that there's no old dudes on it. It's all like, you know, the pop music. Kids absolutely loved it. When I was a child, and I'm an ADHD kid, when I was a child, when they told me to do a book report, I'd rather put my head against the grindstone and just go. But when the teacher said you can make a diorama, you remember those? You know, you'd get your little Playmobil figures, cotton balls and rocks, and make a scene. Awesome. Podcasts are the dioramas of the 21st century. Wikis. Here's another one, and I'm running short on time, but I'll be able to show you this one. Again, maximum impact, low effort. All I did was create a wiki at pbworks.com, what is music? And I typed, what is music? And I pressed go. And the kids, the assignment was to make a class definition, one definition of music. And the first night, first kid, music is tones of different volumes and pitches organized together to form a pattern or piece. Next kid comes up, changes the color of the text and italicizes it. She just wanted to see if she could actually do it. Music is a form of expression in which people can relate. They allow their heart to accept the emotion. Yeah. Then all these kids started putting their answers like that. The next day I yelled at them, what are you doing? Make one definition. That's what I wanted. That's what a wiki is. You edit each other's definitions. They're like, Frankel, how can you say that we can all have the same definition of music? Oh my God, your kids are brilliant. So I love what these kids do. And again, wikis are a great way to connect it. And to kind of wrap things up a little bit, from the creation standpoint, how many of you know the Vermont Mini Project? I am blown away. To me, this is the single best example of music technology in education ever, my humble opinion. Because what they do is they have kids post work online and have composers comment on it. So I'm not going to read all this, but in a nutshell, the 6th grade girl is writing a brass quintet. She posts her part. They use Sibelius and Scorch. She posts a part. It's not very long, not very good. And the composer sends back from that little 4-measure thing this much text. Hey, Brooke, great start. This is what you should do. Try this, try this, try this. Think about this. She then says, awesome, thanks so much. I'll try it. She posts her part. He said, because he said, it's not, if you're going to do the blues, you need to swing. So now it's all swing. And then another composer chimes in, hey, awesome, but you think about a bass line. She says, thanks. I'll add a tuba part. And then the tuba part begins. It goes on and on and on until eventually she's got dynamics, phrase marking, breathing, all that kind of stuff. And this piece was then brought to an Opus concert, which happens in very northern Vermont. And they bring the Vermont Symphony Orchestra brass section, and the kids conduct. And the kids sit there with the musicians and say, I'm sorry, that piece you're playing, that part, not tenuto enough. To the first chair trumpet player of the symphony. And they're like 9 years old. And I go to these, I'm a groupie, I go to every concert, and the musicians always say, yes, maestro. And they write it down, and there's no kind of flack whatsoever. vtmidi.org. All right, so I have other things, and I would urge you to check these 3 exemplary educators out. I think they're great. Amy Burns is the president of Time. She's the elementary person, and she does all this type of stuff, listening, performing, and creating in her K-3 music classroom, and posts everything at amymburns.com. Please go check it out. I don't have the time to go into these sites, but again, all this stuff is located on that landing page. Richard McCready is a teacher, a high school teacher in suburban Baltimore, Maryland, and his kids do video game scoring with Pro Tools, and they're really, really good at it. So check that out. Again, this link will be up on the page, so if you're feverishly writing down. And then there's Jamie Knight, who's a crazy man out in Huntington Beach, California. We love him, and here's his program. Well, you have to go check out the video. Check out Jamie Knight. But his classroom is just like a science lab of music technology. And it's an after-school program where the kids have a record label, they record each other, and it's really a commercial music factory, what he's doing there. Jamie Knight in Huntington Beach, California. And he's a librarian who said, hey, I'm a music teacher, and I play in a band at night. Maybe we could get this program working. All right, so if you were to reimagine your music program in the digital age, what would it look like? I'm sure that many of you at a music tech conference, many of the things I've shared with you, you're probably doing already, or you're doing some of them, I would hope. When I do this in regular music ed audiences, it could be a little bit jarring. And how are you addressing the changing needs of your students? To me, technology is the easiest way to address it. And not using technology just for technology's sake, but teaching music first and allowing the technology to facilitate it. How will you capture, connect, and create in your classroom? Right? And it's so refreshing to hear that they're equally valued, these 3 things, which is really great. Allison, what do you think about moving? And how will you help foster that 3-person model in your classroom? So I have my advice to you all, closing words, start small. Don't go crazy and try to do every project or you'll get frustrated and overwhelmed. Get training, right? You've got all kinds of great people here in Australia that can help you with that. And around the world, you can go on YouTube. It's been said over and over, go on YouTube to say, how do you do this? Connect with others. musicpln.org is a really fantastic resource to share your ideas with other people. And most importantly, ask your students for help. Yep. Say, do any of you know how to do this? Yep. Because the most incredible thing you could do to a kid's self-esteem is have them come up and show you, the teacher, how to do something. All right, so if you have questions, this is my email address, jimf@soundtree.com. And that's the landing page I made. I would like to thank again Katie for inviting me, Glennis for setting everything up, and all the sponsors who have just done a fantastic job. I've had a really wonderful time here, and thank you very much.
Actually via things like Twitter and podcasting, and I've been listening to his podcast for a couple of years now, so that is the reason he's here today, and that's how powerful those tools can be. So I urge you to get into the podcasting, and the wikis that he mentioned and the other types of social media are really, really helpful and useful, and great things happen. I have just a couple of housekeeping announcements. The most exciting one, first of all. Please do not put food in the recycle bins. The recycle bins are the blue ones, I think, with the red lid. Just put food in the green ones, because George, the lovely maintenance man who's been really helpful for us at the conference, has to go through the recycle bin